Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to Bruce's Bees. I am here with Seth Hill. Seth has a new YouTube channel going, and many folks know Seth, but a lot of folks probably don't. So, Seth, why don't you introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit about your history with bees, and we'll just dive right in, man.
Oh yeah, so I'm Seth Hill. I own and operate a little company called Appalachian Bee Ranch. I work for Bob Benny at Blue Ridge Honey Company full time, and then I do the bee ranching on the side. I got started in bees right as about COVID hit. They kicked me out of college and I needed a job, so I went and got a job with Bob and kind of decided I liked bees better than college. So here we are.
You can't complain about that. Yeah, I didn't discover bees till I was like, or really, get into bees at all till I was about 10 years ago. Actually, I was 45, I guess, when I got into them. And so
Ooh,
I wish I'd have gotten into them sooner, but I don't know. Maybe it would have.
yeah,
Maybe it's great, maybe it's better that the obsession came a little bit later in life there for me
yeah.
instead of when all my kids were little. That might not have been the best thing. But it's been it's been a lot of fun. And one thing about these little bugs in the box, man, when you discover them, a lot of people can get addicted. It's easy to get addicted to them
Oh
and
yeah.
want to grow them, and they're really fascinating little creatures. So you've been working for Bob how long?
For about 3 years. This past March was 3 years.
Okay, and you're pretty young. How old are you, Seth?
23. I'll be
23.
24 in June.
Wow, man, one of the bright up and comers in beekeeping, though. I think you're going to do great things with this thing. So Seth and I had a fun opportunity, and I'll post a link to the video in the description below. I went over to South Georgia and hung out with Seth for a day, and we
Mhm.
got into some of his bees and pulled some splits, and we both actually dropped a video on that event. So I'll actually drop Seth. I'll drop a link to both videos in the description
Okay.
to this video, so that way they can go and watch them both. My
Yeah.
video was more focused on that day when I was over there, and then Seth actually focused on the whole weekend. So it's kind of a different perspective. Seth's video was kind of just a little bit of his was the day we were there together, but a lot of it was kind of the follow up and everything he did during that weekend. Just a busy weekend that you had up there,
Oh
man. It was
yeah.
crazy. So I don't know. I don't know. That's for young folks to be able to do
That was a
that, man.
long weekend. A lot of
Man, it's
Red
like
Bull.
you started like at what 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on that Saturday
Yeah.
morning, and you got back to North Georgia what either early the next Monday morning or the late that Sunday night. But
It was late Sunday night. I think I came home Sunday night and went to work Monday morning.
just a couple hours of sleep mixed in there somewhere, wasn't there?
Yeah, buddy.
Seth, tell us just kind of a little teaser here. I know you got a video coming out real soon. It's going to drop a little bit later this evening, and of course, I'll put a link to that video as well in the description. A little bit of a follow up as to what's going on with those bees without telling us the end of the story.
Okay, so not to spill too much of the tea, but they're home now, and I got the results on that video, and I got them all kind of sorted out throughout their boxes and what I wanted to do with them. So that'll be in that upcoming video.
All right. So you can go down if you haven't seen it before you see this video. This video is going to drop probably in a couple days from now. So his video will have been out for a little while, but just go check that out. It'll be in the description below. And I think it'll be really riveting stuff, good stuff. Seth is entertaining and he's got a lot of great bee knowledge, especially to be so young. Of course, Seth, you've learned from a legend in the beekeeping industry,
Oh yeah.
someone who's on YouTube and who's got a really good channel with a lot of great information. He's inspired a lot of people to keep bees, and he's taught a lot of great lessons and shown people how to do a lot of techniques. And so you've been able to have a front row seat to most of that, a lot of that
Yes.
stuff that he's done, especially with the YouTube channel.
Hmm.
And I know you're actually the guy behind the camera on a lot of those videos, aren't you?
Most of the time, yeah. Nowadays, he'll get somebody else too, so me and him can be on the camera. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
You got a co-star there.
yeah, it's kind of weird.
Well, that's pretty cool though. But that is just an incredible opportunity that you've had.
Oh
And
yeah.
so one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here was number one, to talk a little bit about the day that we had, and we've kind of done that a little bit. It was just a great day. It was a long day, but it was a really entertaining day, and I learned a lot about kind of how to get through hives fast and
Hmm.
make a lot of splits in a hurry. And we did a lot of hard work, but we also did a lot of talking along the way, and you guided me through
Yeah.
some things, and we shared a lot of ideas with each other. So that was a phenomenal opportunity for me, and hopefully I was able to help you out a little bit in this at the same time and maybe get
Oh
some
yeah,
work done
man.
for you.
No, we got some splits cracked off that day.
We did. I think we ended up with what 100 and was
I think it was
107, 104.
104,
I think you're
104.
right.
That's what I
Something like
brought
that. It
home.
was over 100 anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that was in probably what 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah,
We
just
got a little
about.
bit of late start, and we were videoing some stuff at the beginning, and so it was a little bit slow. And once we got cranking, we
Oh,
went
dude,
through them
yeah.
pretty fast. So it was great. So I learned a lot, but I think I just kind of like to start off with this. The title of this series I'm doing, it's kind of a playlist, a video podcast type thing here on my YouTube channel, and the title of that playlist is Intentional Beekeeping. And I think that a lot of folks out there just kind of are trying to figure it out. They may just kind of be running around trying everything, which I still do some of that. Today I went to the bee yard and there was a great big swarm hanging there. I didn't plan on doing that. So what I intentionally planned on doing, I did do, but that really kind of threw a wrench in everything. It took me a while to get that swarm caught. And so things don't always go as planned. But there are certain strategies, principles that you have to apply if you want to accomplish your goals. And so you've been able to hang out with Bob Benny now for 3 years, and everything he does is intentional, I'm sure. And he's giving you some good guidance, and now you're doing your own thing. So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit on some of the things that you do to kind of prepare, to be more, I guess, efficient with what you're doing. Some of the things that you intentionally do. Maybe first of all, just talk about what that term might mean to you, intentional beekeeping, and then kind of roll with some of the things that you've learned that really help in your experience.
Yeah, so the intentional thing works, but you kind of got to have that one side of you that can fly by the seat of your pants. Like, you catch a swarm, or if they're all trying to swarm you, plans change middle of the bee yard. But intentional beekeeping's got a lot to do with kind of formulating a plan the day or two before you go out and really getting all of my ducks in a row. That way, when I hit the bee yard, I can just ride. I don't have to worry about setting stuff up or trying to get each and every colony independently took care of. I try to intentionally work my colonies by the yard and not by the colony too. So if you kind of set the whole yard up the same, it'll make you be a faster beekeeper. You can kind of run the rhythm throughout each colony in that yard instead of having to change the plan at every single colony.
That makes sense. Well, I know that day when I was over there, you actually told me kind of what you wanted to see in the
Mm-hmm.
nukes that we split off, kind of the strategy to use. And then, obviously each colony is a little bit different, has a little bit of a
Oh,
different
right.
personality, but we knew what those nukes all wanted to look like, or
Yes.
kind of what they wanted to look like. And so we were able to go through and look for certain types of frames, certain frames of brood, food.
Yeah.
I looked for the queen, just certain things we looked for. And then when we found those things, we were able to put them
Mm-hmm.
into the nuke boxes for the splits. And then you also told me kind of how you wanted the box that the donor colony to look when we left. And so we knew a plan of what we wanted to split out, but also what we wanted the original colony to look like. And so it made it easy to kind of make sure everything looked right. And so obviously
Yeah.
you break into some of those big double deeps and you've got 10, 12 frames of brood, and some of them have
Yeah.
3 or 4. But if they just didn't have any resource, if we didn't split them, and
Right.
if they had plenty or too many, then we took the excess and we put them in those splits. And
Mm-hmm.
you had an absolute plan when we got there. And once you kind of got me rolling and I guess instructed on what to do, we made some tracks
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
fast. We made a lot of splits in a
Absolutely.
hurry. And so I guess that kind of leads to the next question. What is your goal moving forward? What do you enjoy doing the most, and how do you think you're going to be able to make it profitable?
So what I really enjoy doing is making bees. I really love making queens. I'm not so fond of having to do it on a schedule yet, but that's just part of the game. Everybody wants their queens on a certain day, so you got to crank them out and have them ready. I guess one of my main goals is to be sitting at 300 going into the wintertime. And when I say that, I don't mean like 300 full fledged singles. I'm talking like maybe 200 full size colonies, and then, maybe some small overwintered nukes above, just to cover my numbers going into next spring. And I guess another goal I'm kind of been toying with in the back of my brain, because Bob used to do this when he went south a lot. He would run a 1.5. He would run a deep and a medium, or a deep and a shallow, instead of a double deep, because the way he moved his colonies was on two-way pallets. And that's another thing I want to do. I want to move my colonies over to two-way pallets. But he would use a hand truck. He built a really heavy duty hand truck, pick up 2 colonies at a time and move them instead of having to have a forklift. So that's, a couple goals of mine. I want to get everything moved over to like a 1.5 size colony maybe, and then I want to get, switched over to two-way pallets so I can really start moving colonies yard by yard by yard instead of moving them by hand or having to borrow a forklift or somebody's pallets.
Do you think the advantage to the 1.5 size colonies is the weight, or what do you think the advantage to that is?
Well, there's a little bit of everything there. You can keep a little bit more food on them. There's more space. It gives you a little bit of playtime down there, like in the late, not early spring, but later on in the spring. A double deep can get away from you fast. I was really kind of overwhelmed there for a little bit. About a week or two there before me and you went down there to split, everything was having swarm cells, and I was really having to kind of rob Peter to pay Paul to keep everybody in the box. And that was in double deeps. So a 1.5 and a single is going to be a little bit different, but I think if I time it just right next year, I should be able to run the 1.5s and maybe make another round of nukes or the nukes sooner and then bring everybody home. And I can do
Mhm.
it all by myself. I won't have to borrow trucks and equipment and all that kind of stuff.
So when you say double deeps, you mean you'll just split them down harder, so the colonies will be
Yes.
smaller going into winter instead of just
Yeah.
letting them stay in the double deeps. I see what you're
Yep.
saying.
Exactly.
That makes sense. I know over here a lot of what a lot of the folks right here, and we're basically due west of where your South Georgia bees were. A lot of us, like I run a lot of deeps and mediums, especially for the pollination stuff. My production stuff, I just kind of let them do whatever the space feels right, because they're right here close and I can kind of manage them and stay on top of them. But that's kind of a goal I would have, is to get a more consistent sized colony across the board. But it's so
hmm
hard for me to do that. How do you do that? Because each queen's a little different. How do you keep them all kind of the same size?
Usually, so what I'm familiar with running, I've never done the 1.5. That's going to be kind of alien to me, but I usually just either run them as a single or a double deep. And I try to kind of keep them as singles because singles for me are easier to move. Don't get me wrong, I can pick up a double deep, but I don't want to move a yard of double deeps at night, getting them ready to go into Sourwood, especially after they're winterized. That's just almost not doable. Keeping them the same size, you're really playing an equalization game kind of all year long. And, there's ways to do it at different times of the year. It varies.
Do you do that by just taking brood and moving it to the weaker colonies
Yeah,
and
you
stuff like
can,
that?
like
Or
this time of the year, that'd be what you'd want to do. But, like later on when you're pulling your honey supers off, if you got a weaker colony versus a bigger one, you stack. I use escape boards. I don't use fume boards. Put your escape boards on the weak ones and stack them up, a lot higher. And the bees will actually stay with the colony they have to come through somewhat. I think like a quarter of them stay. So you kind of
okay.
play equalization game like that. And then
So
once you
wait,
go back through,
so wait a minute. So how do you do that with the weaker ones? You say you stack them up. What do you mean?
so when you put using escape, you've used escape boards before,
I
right?
have. Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
So you put the escape board on the weak one, and then you take all the honey supers from the stronger ones, and you put them on the
Oh,
escape boards over the weaker ones, and that way some of the bees from your supers stay with the weaker ones, and it's not like a great equalization, but it kind of works.
oh, so you put it over there, like you stack the full honey supers over on the weaker colonies full of
Yes.
bees, and
Yep.
those bees go down and they stay. Okay, and they go
Yep.
down through that honey through the skateboard, and they just think that's their colony theoretically.
Yes, I think
Huh?
Bob
That's
only says
interesting.
like a third of them or a quarter of them stay. But when you got 4 boxes worth off of stronger colonies, that adds up after a while.
That's interesting. I had never even thought about that.
hmm
I used to use the escape boards. I actually ordered a whole bunch of those,
Oh,
and I
really?
like them. I really like them better, but it's just the labor to try and get out there,
Yeah.
2 or 3 days before you're going to pull the honey, and then stack those things up, and then have to, it's just an extra step. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
found, and last year we used fume boards exclusively, pretty much on everything, and man, it was so much faster. I had
Oh,
a pretty
yeah.
good crew. We got to rocking and rolling, but I actually like the skateboards better because the bees don't even. It's like they don't even realize you're taking their honey that way. It's like they just kind of
hmm
naturally work their way out of the supers. You pull the
Yeah.
honey and go, and there's not a lot of using a blower. There's not a lot of angry bees. It's just kind of,
Mm.
you pull the honey and go. I like that setup better, but man, it's hard just doing it by myself to
Yeah.
try to get
It
that done,
is.
especially working full time, which you do the same thing. You work for Bob full time, so you
Right.
got to figure out how to do it. So, oh, I've probably got 60 or 70 skateboards.
Oh, wow.
Got a bunch. Which after I ordered all those, I ordered. after I ordered all those, I only used them, I think, one time or before I decided to use fume boards. So, but fume boards by yourself, they're not super fast either. But you got a crew of,
Right.
3 or 4 people.
Oh yeah.
If you got, like, I think we had, maybe 6 or 7 fume boards, maybe even 8 fume boards going at the same time last year,
Oh
and we
yeah.
had a crew
You're
of
moving.
I think 4, 6 people, something like that,
Holy
four to
cow.
six people,
Yeah, you were
and
moving.
we literally were just throwing the fume boards on there. Got them on 4 or 5. We had 2 teams going, and we basically
Mhm.
just as you take one fume board off, put it on the next colony. One person do that, then it's pulling the honey, and just, man, it just went
Yep.
so fast. And
Oh yeah.
if you got a good crew, you can do that fast. But doing it by yourself, I don't know if it's all that much faster with fume boards. And that's just that extra step is difficult with the escape boards, but
Right.
different ways to do it. But I had
Yeah.
never thought of that, man. That makes a lot of sense though. If
Mhm.
you stack those boxes full of bees above it, yeah, that, especially if you're using queen excluders, obviously you don't have any risk of the queen being in there. So you can
Right.
do that. That makes, man, I learned something, and I may try that if I decide to use the skateboards again. That's
And
awesome, man.
like I say, it kind of works. It's not a surefire equalization tactic, but it works. I mean,
So here's another thing that I think over time, the queen situation, obviously, strong colonies are stronger for a reason, and many times it's because they have a more productive queen. Ultimately, right? Because
yes.
so if you do the equalization, the number of bees can go up, but ultimately, if that queen is still a little weaker, they'll ultimately just fade again, and they'll kind of fizzle out again, right? So you have to continuously kind of be adding to that.
Mhm.
Do you typically try to just replace that queen if you find some that are lagging behind? Is that kind of what you do, or what do
Um,
you do? How do you manage that to get them
not
strong?
not yet. Maybe in the coming years when I get a little bit more of my own, I will. But unless she's like totally just not producing, like she's starting to lay shotgun brood real bad, or she's
Just really weak.
really, really lagging behind, I'll get rid of her. But for the most part, if she's just a little bit behind, I might just throw a frame of brood in there until I see she's really starting to fail,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
I'll pinch her.
And every
Um,
once in a while, it seems like if you give them a boost, sometimes that queen will kick it in gear and
right,
start doing good again. So just
exactly.
maybe she'll sense that the hive is stronger again and be able to move it forward some. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's usually a pollen or a feed issue, unless she's old and she's failing, that
Yeah.
I have observed.
What do you do to keep the average age of your queens a little bit lower, or what do you do to make sure your queens are strong and rolling? How do you manage that?
So when I've just now got to where I had enough colonies that I had to worry about it. I could requeen every year when I had like 20 or 30, but last year I got up into like the 150 range, so I ended up not requeening everything. This year, and this is going to be in that video that I'm talking about, I'll actually have all new queens by way of my nuke battery. And
Mhm.
selling singles this spring.
Okay.
I'll sold the singles with the old queen in them
Okay.
with fairly good equipment for a good price. So I got rid of all my old queens.
That makes sense. And so, yeah, I didn't realize you did that. So that is
Mhm.
one way to do it, I guess. That's that makes a lot of sense. Is that you sell the old queen? I'm sure you let them know that that's the old queen, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I let them know it was last year's or the year before's or whatever. And if she's doing junk, I won't sell her. I'll pinch her and just absolve it into other stuff. But if she's
Mhm.
still good, doing a good job, I don't mind selling them.
So how do you say you pinch a queen like that, and you've got a bunch of, you want to, like, introduce it to other colonies, just kind of strengthen other colonies with that hive that you're dissolving. How do you introduce those bees to other colonies? What do you do
So
to strengthen them?
usually I'll try to do it in like 1 or 2 frame increments. Like I'll give this a frame of brood, this a frame of brood. If this needs a little food, I'll give it 2 frames of food or something.
You just kind of dissolve it. Well, you see where the
Yeah,
need is and just add them. And
right.
have you noticed any issues with bees fighting or killing each other?
Not much, because usually whenever I'm equalizing, I'm feeding as well. Not always, but most of the time, and feed kind of mitigates that a little bit. But
Yeah, that is key. I don't feed mine as much as you do, and I probably should do better at that. It's kind of a financial thing. It's so expensive to
oh, it's expensive.
keep pumping the sugar water to them all the time, and the
Yep,
food and the syrup. And
yep.
so I'm just too cheap, man. I think my bees would do,
Hey,
they
it,
probably build up quicker and be stronger year round if I did that, but it's
yeah.
just it's tough for me to do that.
Oh no, it's expensive.
Yeah, so that's one area I think I'm a little weak at, is the actual nutrition part of it.
Yeah.
Having your bees in South Georgia, you're just literally what 140, 150 miles west of me here. It's similar type weather conditions. It's probably similar type food coming in at
Yeah.
different times. I know that where your bees were, there wasn't a lot of tallow or popcorn trees there, but the climate is very, very similar over there. And
Uh-huh.
so, as you know, there's a lot of pollen coming in most of the year
Yes.
down there in South Georgia, but the issue is more the nectar, it seems like to me.
Right.
Here, that's the problem anyway. And so they'll be rock and rolling, bringing in pollen, and you think, man, there's a flow going on, but then you look in the hives and
Oh,
there's
they're
really not
dry.
any nectar. They're dry. And so that's something to consider, and I need to do better. I know the people that pump the food to them, the bees typically stay stronger and they seem healthier. But
Oh,
when
yeah.
the flow hits in the spring, man, they take off.
Oh, of
And
course.
they kick it in gear. And I don't mind if mine breed back a little bit in the wintertime. First of all, they don't need as many resources that way. And
Right.
but it's a little iffy because when you got the Cardinals and the Italians and the different types of bees,
Mm-hmm.
you look at one colony, they'll have like a little softball size cluster of bees, and you're like, man, that hive stinks. And then they blow it out in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those Italians have brood all winter long, and they kind of may have some issues, with mites and things like that because of the
Right.
brood or whatever, just different issues. Different bees have different issues. And so, are your bees basically kind of descendants of Bob's stock, or have you kind of developed your own stock?
Well, it was a little bit of both. These older queens were kind of my stock ish.
Mm-hmm.
They were grafted from Bob's breeder, but they were open mated kind of everywhere, not necessarily within Bob's mating triangle.
Okay.
Now, most of my bees are going to be Carney Caucasians, just like Bob's, because all of my mating nukes are within Bob's Carney Caucasian mating triangles.
Okay.
There's one yard that's not, but it's so far out of the way, it's not really, and it's so small, it's not really going to make that big of a ding in my operation, I don't think.
Now the bees that you had in South Georgia when we pulled those nukes out, were they mating with some of Bob's stock as well? Were those his descendants down there, his stock?
Yeah, so about half of them were, and then the other half were from the out yards. That was
Okay.
my stuff, Italian. Most of it was like it was dark, but it had a lot of Italian influence.
Okay. Are you selling some queens this year?
Yes, I've got 450. I'm booked out all the way until like the end of June, 1st of July.
Man, that's cool.
That is really cool. I was
That'll be a nice
tickled
shot in the
pink.
arm for you. It'll make it worth the food bills and stuff and all the
Yeah.
stuff
Oh
you've had
yeah.
to do to get those things growing. One thing I noticed when I was over there working with you was just how you really do have a plan with what you're doing. Everything is intentional. And that's one of the things I struggle with really is kind of knowing, what to do. I show up at a bee yard with an idea of what I want to accomplish, and then it usually takes me way longer than I think it should, or I end up
Oh right.
running into other stuff, and I don't know. It's just tough for me to really have a plan and work that plan. It seems like I think part of it might be that my genetics are all over the place. So
That could be
I
it.
got bees that are in 5 frame nukes, and I got bees in double deeps or double deep
Right.
stacked with two supers on there. And that's tough for me to just figure it all out. But what I usually do is I show up with a trailer load of all kinds of stuff and then just kind of try to mix
Mhm.
and match however I need to. But my goal is to kind of get consistent across the board.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the pollination stuff, they have to all look the same and be in certain pods or certain configurations in order to fit on the truck. And so that's kind of what I'd like to do. The bees did just get back from pollination, and today I went out there with the idea of just filming me, just kind of peeking in on them, and I threw some probiotics to them, and
Oh, okay.
and of course I showed up, that big swarm is hanging there, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And
Yeah.
of course it's huge, and so I had to film that, and so that had to be
Yeah.
something. And so it ended up taking me way longer than I anticipated, but that's really one of my goals, is just to get more consistent. I think
Yeah.
if I fed more, maybe with the in frame type feeders like what you use, or even buckets or just some sort of a
Right.
feeder, I think that would help me with that goal a little bit. So just compare to us a little bit the difference between North Georgia and South Georgia. Obviously, there's a
Oh,
huge difference, I know.
golly.
So just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Oh, right. So this was my first experience with South Georgia beekeeping ever, really. So I took my bees down. I took all the beehives I had except for like 4 or 5. They were double deeps. They were set for the winter time. They didn't have mite issues. So I just left them up there. I think I brought down 72. I think they were all in singles at the time. There might have been a few double deeps. I think there was a pallet of double deep, yeah, that's what it was. There was 2 pallets of double deeps and the rest of them were in singles. So I brought those down December the 2nd, and I came back for a 1 month inspection like January 3rd or January 4th, and they had been on a wild radish pollen flow, and they already had 2 frames of brood in them in the first week in January, which was like blowing my mind. I was borderline like wanting to call Bob and be like, Bob, my bee's got 2 frames of brood in them. Holy crap, what do I do? I was tickled pink. But anyway, so they exploded so fast. Like I said, I was kind of having trouble keeping them in the box there for a little while. People kind of like to look at dead colonies as a total loss, but from my dead colonies, I had about 40 boxes of comb sitting around. So I had a good kind of advantage there where I just set boxes on top of big ones. And if there was a couple small ones, I took 1 frame out of each one of them and boosted and did all this, that, and the other, and made one good enough to take a box, or, kind of equalized everybody good enough to turn them into double deeps. And once they started drawing, all bets were off. It was just it was crazy. And, when you get like last year up here, I actually fed my bees pollen sub last year. I didn't have to this year because they were on that pollen in the 1st of December. But when you're up here, we tried, and I sold some nukes last year. I probably won't do that for a while because my frames are all new. Nukes are a good way to generate income, but if you have all new frames and you're having to have your nukes draw out foundation, to me, that's just kind of cost prohibitive a little bit. I like to get a few years out of my frames before I sell them, if I can. And, I'm not totally broke. So we kind of like to keep our nuke production colonies on a 3-week regiment with pollen sub.
Okay.
And this year we didn't have to do that because all Mother Nature, for some reason, decided to start the clock 3 weeks early. And there was natural pollen coming in about the time we were going to put on pollen sub. So why put on pollen sub when they're getting the real stuff? And
yeah, it's, the real stuff's actually better from what I understand. So
way, way better. So anyway, and up here, you kind of got 2 honey flows. From what I understand, unless you're on like cotton or vegetables or something down south, you only get 1 spring flow, I think. I don't know about fall flows and all that kind of stuff. But up here, you get a spring flow, and then we get the sourwood flow in the summertime. And actually, where I'm at in the Appalachian Mountains, I'm actually at one of the most strategic or geographically advantageous regions of Georgia, because to the south of us, it's like 1,300 feet of elevation. But as you start going north, you start climbing into 22, 23, and 2,400 feet. So to the south of us, like 15, 20 minutes south of us, you've got a 2-week difference between there and the north. And it's 15 or 20 minutes. You don't have to go 3 or 4 hours, So that's one very big plus about living up north is we have that advantage so close.
So you can just move your colonies, like get a flow in one spot, pull the honey, and then move them up north and get another flow.
Exactly.
The same the sourwood. Wow.
Yep.
I know sourwood isn't it dependent upon elevation as far as the productivity of sourwood?
Yeah, kinda. It's got a lot to do with the soil, the rainfall, and your elevation's got a little bit to do with it. So sourwood, as per what the textbooks say, only puts out from 1,800 to like 2,400 feet or 2,200 feet, excuse me. It's like a 400-foot deal right there, but we'll make it down close to 1,600, and then we've got a couple yards up close to like 2,300 feet, and we'll make some there too. But I think the best tasting stuff comes from 1,800 foot to 2,200 foot, and that's where you want to be parked.
That's interesting. I've never had sourwood honey that I know of.
Oh man, we're gonna have to hook you up.
I've heard it's really good. I know sourwood and Tupelo are supposedly the top 2 honeys around, maybe in the country, but at least for sure in this area. So I know that they're both kind of elite honeys, and I'm sure people from the different regions would argue about which one's better.
Yeah. See,
but I've tried Tupelo. Tupelo's okay, but it's all right. I don't love Tupelo.
I've had Tupelo, and it's not really all that great to me.
It's just different. It's a unique taste for sure.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard kind of describe what sourwood tastes like. Is there any way you could describe it?
So sourwood's got like a buttery, creamy smoothness to it is the best,
Okay.
because my palate's screwed up. I'm not no world-class chef or nothing, but that's the best way I know how to describe it. Just the
Huh.
buttery, creamy, and it's so smooth. It's just as smooth as
Is it real
smooth.
sweet, or does it have a little bit of a strong flavor to it, or is it?
It's not strong at all. It's just really kind of just sweet and mellow, just like a creamy, smooth type of flavor.
I'm gonna have to try some one of these days. I
Oh,
I
we'll get
really
you some.
I really want to get up there and visit Bob's place. I've never been up to his place before.
Yeah.
I've been up in that area, like in the North Georgia mountains, a time or two, but I've never. I probably didn't even know he was up there before that when I was up in that area. But I don't think I've actually been to that exact spot. But I know there's a guy not too far from there lives in Blairsville, Georgia. If you know where Blairsville is,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
and
Blairsville's like the next mountain over, pretty much.
yeah, he's Greg Collins. He's uh he's a fun guy. I went up there back. I think it was maybe 2015. Went up there and hung out with him a little bit. Me and a buddy went up there and just kind of hung out with him for a couple of days. Had a blast. It was right before the sourwood flow, so
Ooh,
he was trying to get everything kind of ready for that. And he's a kind of a commercial guy. He's a large sideliner guy, and he's been
there you
kind of
go.
working with the bees for a while. But he's up in that area. I think he also brings some bees down to South Georgia somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where, but
Yeah.
he's absolutely hilarious. I think the name of his company is Hillbilly Beekeeping Company or something like that.
Oh, cool, man.
And he's a hillbilly. It's awesome. Talk to us a little bit about what you do, maybe what you and Bob do, or your particular philosophy on mite control.
So there's a lot of different factors that go into that. It's got a lot to do with how much you split and how much you go to South Georgia, because I went and picked up a massive mite load. I don't think I put that in this video. It's going to be in a follow-up video here pretty soon, maybe next week's or the weeks after. When you go south like that, your bees never go broodless pretty much. Even if they're up home for a short time of being broodless and you oxalic acid them, they're not really getting a really good brood break. So when you go south like that, they've got brood in them all year long. So your OA treatments and stuff like that are basically useless. I tried the Formic Pro, but I didn't really give them a good enough treatment with it. I didn't use it to its fullest advantage, or its fullest,
Efficiency.
yeah, there we go, fullest efficiency. So I can't really speak on how well it works or not. We like to use Apiguard in the fall time and then oxalic acid in the wintertime when you stay home. Now, I'm going to have to figure out a little bit of a different regiment, because Bob don't go south anymore. So he's got that broodless advantage that I don't have now. So, and a lot, and honestly, my first, second year of beekeeping, when I went from 8 to 80, I split so hard. There were so many brood breaks that there was not a large mite load going into wintertime. And I smacked them with an extra round of oxalic acid, and they were really clean coming into the springtime. So if you can, I know it's hard. It's got to be way too hard when you get up to 200 or 300 colonies to have enough brood breaks and everybody to do that. You'd have to split everybody 5 or 6 times, and that's just not doable when you're at that level. Even 150 colonies 6 times is not doable for some people. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So if you can employ, and this is for your smaller guys, if you can employ enough brood breaks at the right time of the year, so this is going to be early in the year and then later on in the fall, and then try that oxalic acid, you can really just get away with oxalic acid. But the way Bob developed it, and I get paid to do it for him, is to use Apiguard in the fall time, and then as the bees go broodless around Thanksgiving, hit them with oxalic acid for about 3 continuous rounds, and then they seem to come out pretty clean.
Yeah, I think down here in the South, and I'm still trying to figure some of this out too. Amitraz based products like Apivar,
Yeah.
things like that. Or Apivar is the Amitraz based product that's out there that's legal.
Yeah.
But one thing about Apivar that I do like is that it's like a 6 to 8 week treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in there like kind of slow release. You can use it in the summertime when it's hot, brood in the
Right.
colonies. You just actually, so it I guess is that theoretically it's effective for that whole time frame.
Mhm.
that it goes through a couple brood cycles there, and so it eliminates the mites. And so I know some people have talked about Happavore is not effective, but I've had pretty good success with it. The problem with Happavore is
Really?
it's so darn expensive, man.
Yeah.
It's like $3 or $3.50 a strip, and you're supposed to have a strip for every 5 frames of brood. And so,
Yeah.
you got a big old double deep. I mean, you're looking at, maybe 12 to 15 frames of brood. That's 3 strips,
Mhm.
2 to 3 strips per colony. And so
Yeah.
it adds up, but I've had pretty good effectiveness with that. Last year I tried Apigard in the fall in October, and well, actually September, October, I think is when I did that. And it was mixed results. It was still pretty hot down here then. And
Mm.
so I just tried they say if it's over, I think, is it 85 degrees, whatever the temperature is,
85. Yeah.
80 or 85, whatever that temperature is. I have to look on the package, but you can use a half a dose and do it, I guess, however many days apart it is. Maybe it's
I think
10 days,
it's
2 weeks.
10 days. I think you do it 10 days, about 10 days.
But whatever it is, I did that with pretty good results, but I still had a few that were it wasn't effective on. I'm not sure why. It seems like on a few of those they would propolize around the Apigard,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and so then I don't know if this is effective if they propolize around it. But theoretically, that can create a brood break, which would then
Right.
make it possible to use the oxalic acid even here in the southern part of Alabama or Georgia. And so I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out. It is tough. I have used oxalic acid vapor usually around Thanksgiving time. I'll hit them like 3 or 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And I think it's worked pretty well. It's kept the bees pretty clean. With the oxalic acid, you just got to keep pounding them with it several
Yeah.
weeks in a row. And so many people just want to hit them once or twice, I think, and think it's
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
effective, and it's not. If there's any brood in there, you got to hit them multiple times,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it'll knock those mites down. But I'm trying Formic Pro. These pollination bees came back. They don't look super great. They were out there too long. There was all kinds of issues with the mud and the weather, and so the
Oh, wow.
almonds quit blooming, and so they've been sitting out there. I think they had built up pretty strong, and they've been sitting out there really without any food. So they're really light right now, and so
Oh,
it's
wow.
kind of today I noticed that, and that'll be in the video. But mediocre results coming back from pollination. Not super thrilled with what happened out there this year, and so.
Yeah.
But what I want to do, we're going to have some perfect days later this week for temperature wise for
Yeah.
Formic
Oh, yeah.
Pro. So I want to try it out and do the full dose on all the colonies that are strong enough. If they're a weak colony, I'm not going to put it on there, but for the stronger colonies, and just see how that works. Because I've heard people have great results with the Formic Pro, the full dose, for two
Yeah.
weeks. And I had good results. I've tried it on a couple of colonies, and what happens is it completely seems to shut the queen down
Right.
initially for just a few days. But then when she comes back, the couple of colonies I've used it on so far, now I don't have extensive knowledge in it. It knocked the mites way down, and then the queen just starts laying back a beautiful brood pattern. It's like she just kind of kicks it into gear again. So I like the idea of using that, but we'll see. I do know too, Seth, that when I was down there, I had just put it in my colony. I think when I went down there to help you out that day,
Yeah.
and you had left the paper on, which is the right way to do it. And I learned that lesson the
Oh,
hard way.
yeah. I was wondering because I was
I know. Yeah, you left the paper
sometimes
on. That's what you're
if
supposed
you
to do.
read directions,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
lead you astray. But I was like, well, the directions
No.
said to leave the paper
Yeah,
on.
I looked through the directions, but I don't think the directions are super clear. But man, as soon as I posted that video where I'd removed the paper, you know how the Formic Pro has it's got the paper and then it's got like a waxy type, almost like
Yeah.
another layer.
Yeah.
I was thinking that I guess that was the wicking material it talks about.
Right.
So
And that makes sense. I
I
mean,
thought the
that,
paper was just like a wrapper you took off, and then that was
yeah.
what they were talking about. So I was just confused, but I don't know if you saw my Formic Pro videos, but I did one on the application and the results, and then I did a follow up the next day. Actually got a
Oh,
hold of
yeah.
Tom, and I did a follow up the next day with no, I did it wrong. This is what I did, and I think if they could even if they put on the silver package that it comes in, if they could
Yes.
put like do not remove the paper wrap,
Hmm.
that'll help keep people from doing that. Because I bet I'm not the only person that's done that.
Oh, I
So
wouldn't doubt it because I mean that makes total sense. I mean, I get what you were saying where you rip that thing off and it.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
but
well,
I'm interested to try. People in the South are scared of that stuff, but I'm eager to try it on a certain number of colonies and see what happens. As long as the temperature is okay and you have enough space in the colony with enough of the
yeah,
entrance for them to circulate the air, I think it's a pretty darn good treatment. We'll see. We'll see
I'm
how it works. But
definitely gonna try it next spring if I can get a hold of a bunch of it.
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna do a couple of yard. I don't know if I'm gonna do a couple of yards. I might do 1 yard test 1 yard of this. Like I might do an Apagard yard, a Formic Pro yard, and then just a leaving it ride for a
See
little
what
bit
happens.
yard. Yeah, just see what happens.
Sounds reasonable. So we've talked a little bit about mite treatments. We've talked a little bit about nutrition. Talk to us a little bit more about nutrition. What do you do? I know we mentioned earlier, and you can see in your video that you feed them quite a bit, but kind of
Yes.
talk about your strategy for feeding the bees and, kind of what do you do there? Obviously, you probably stop feeding if you're trying to bring in honey, of course, but talk a little about, do you feed them all the time when there's not a flow, or what's your strategy with feeding your bees?
So most of the time, I try to keep 1 to 2 frames of stores in the colony leading into the honey flow. If they're really, really big, you don't want to stimulate them with that because that's what sugar syrup will do if you mix it right. It will it's very stimulative for them, and they'll want to swarm on you, especially with a bucket. With those black in-hive feeders, it's not as bad. It's a
Hmm.
good way to keep them metered out until they hit that flow. But in the springtime, and then, like in the fall time when you're trying to get them heavy for wintertime, I'll thicken that sugar water up so they'll have enough weight going into wintertime that they don't have to worry about starving. And sugar water is actually a healthier feed to go into wintertime with because it's cleaner. It doesn't have all that, like dark honeys have a lot of minerals and junk in them. And if that sits in their gut for too long, it can kind of be unhealthy for them. As for this time of the year, you're running like a 1-to-1 mixture, just trying to keep them stimulated a little bit, rear and brood and stuff, not trying to get them to leave the box or anything. Back in like February, for me, I was feeding to try to stimulate for brood rearing so they would grow out and fill out the box so I could split them. And it really kind of depends what you want to do. If you're wanting to stimulate them to get to draw comb, just to draw comb to fill up the box,
Hmm.
going in, like let's say I don't know, you probably got a 4 or 5 frame single and you want to grow it out into a double deep and the honey flow is, let's say 6 weeks out. You could mix a batch of thinner sugar water, like 1.3 to 1, I think is the ideal comb drawing feed.
Hmm.
Feed them that for maybe a week or two, and that'll cause them to draw out a lot of foundation in that top box. And they'll have that double deep full as soon as they hit the honey flow. They're peaked, and then they finish the rest of it out with the honey flow, and then you stack supers on, and you're good to go. So you can feed all different kinds of ways. It just depends what you're really trying to do with your bees. I like to have feed handy year round, except for when the honey's flowing, because you don't need to, because they're going to go to the honey over, or the nectar over your sucrose syrup.
Absolutely. Well, they'll go. They'll actually go to. I don't know if they go to sucrose syrup over honey. Do they? I'm not
No,
sure.
no, they'll leave a full 2 gallon bucket sitting on top of a colony if there's honey flowing.
For nectar, but I'm talking about for honey. Like if you set honey out, if they have a
Oh,
choice, I think if there's honey on the colony, they'll still go after the sugar, won't they?
I think so
I think they
because,
prefer it. It's better for
right.
they. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Not
Oh,
that it
no.
matters. I know that I just know that, like you said, that if you want to stimulate them, you can feed them, and
Oh, yeah.
if you really want to draw out some comb, that's the way to do it. I think. I
Heck yeah.
know we've got a guy down here. He's a young guy. He's basically a commercial beekeeper. Still works full time. I got a couple of guys like that. They're both in their 30s. I'm not sure Tyler might be 29, but anyway, they're both pretty young. And Tyler has, I think, like around 1,000+ colonies, and he still works
Oh,
full time.
wow.
But he just he
Wow.
just he just does splits and just rolls with it, feeds them constantly, and he sells a lot of nukes, and
Oh, okay. I
he
got you.
just makes bees, man. He just knows how to do it, and he
That's
uses a lot of the
awesome.
same principles you're talking about. So he is so efficient. I just don't know how he does it, but he does. I need to go work with him a
That's a
couple of days and
lot
just
of
see what he
work.
does. Yeah, he's going to go full time. He wants to go full time into the bees, I think, pretty soon.
He
So
sounds like he's got the grounds to do it.
he's only been keeping bees, I think, maybe a little bit longer than you, since 2018. I think is when they started, and
Oh,
he's
wow.
just figured it out, man. He just went in, both guns blazing, and he's doing a good job.
That's awesome.
From what I understand with the feeding, if you want to put weight on, feed them heavy. If you want to stimulate them and kind of just give them a natural food, like 1-to-1 is kind of the most
Uh-huh.
common feed that people give. And then if you really want to stimulate that
Yes.
comb drawing than a thinner syrup, like a 1 to 1.3 or whatever, 1 to 2 even. I think for some people use that. But so 2 to 1 for heavy, 1 to 1 for just, I guess, brood rearing
Yeah.
and stimulation that way, and then maybe even a 1 to 2, or maybe not quite that thin for comb. Is that what you would say
Yeah.
probably?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you can really manipulate those bees whatever you want to
Yes.
do. But like you said, if there is a strong flow going, or honey
Right.
flow going, you need to just there's no need to feed,
Oh yeah.
because they'll just
They won't even go
they don't
for it.
need it. They don't need it. They love that nectar, man. They love that stuff.
Hmm.
There's nothing quite like getting into a colony when they're just bringing that nectar in and they're just happy as they can be. They're building
Oh yeah.
that white wax is just being laid in everywhere, and man,
Yeah,
they
man.
just you can smell it coming in. It's just such a cool
Oh
thing.
yeah.
It's like down here, I think we work. Now we do have two flows, but they're right one after the other. They're one right after the other.
Oh really?
We have the privet, I think, hits pretty
Mhm.
hard right now. It's just coming in, and then right around the time privet ends, we have the tallow that kicks in, the Chinese tallow tree,
Oh really?
and that's like a fire hose down here. You go from a water hose with the privet to a fire hose with the tallow, and then it's just done. Like it'll go for
No
2
kidding.
to 3 weeks, maybe at most 3 to 4 weeks, and then by mid June, we're done pretty much down here typically. And so then you got a little stuff trickling in here or there, and it's just it's not a lot of fun. After that. So do you like when you're between flows, like even in the spring and summer, do you start feeding then? Like say you have your spring
Yeah.
flow, and like say, I don't know when that, just say it's over by mid-May, just say, I don't know if
Right.
it is or not, or maybe early June. And then,
Kind of ish.
and then the sourwood kicks in what, in July? Is that right?
July 4th is usually go day for sourwood supers.
So for those 2 weeks between, do you typically feed, or you just let them roll with it for those couple of weeks in between the two flows?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. If you're running Italian bees, they put everything up in the honey supers. So if you don't want them to starve for those 2 weeks, you got to feed them a little bit to help them along. But if you're running a more frugal bee, it's not really that big a deal. As long as they got enough weight in the brood nest to last them those 2 or 3 weeks or month or whatever, we usually just let them ride.
Here's a question for you. I just thought about this. Now, you talked about stacking up honey supers. I know you've heard the term queen excluders. Some people believe can be called honey excluders.
Right.
So, how do you stimulate those bees? How do you get them to go up into those upper boxes? Do you draw them up first and then put the queen excluder in, or do you just stack them up on top of the queen excluder and hope they go up there?
So if we're trying to draw foundation, see, Bob's got a lot of comb.
Yeah.
So we'll stick a comb kind of hanging out on everything. If it's let me rephrase that. We try to draw our comb out on our double deeps because you actually don't need an excluder on a double deep, believe it or not. They create what's called a honey band above the brood in the second box, and you probably know this.
Mm-hmm.
The queen doesn't come above that rarely. She will, don't get me wrong, but most of the time she stays in the lower box. And so we try to draw out a lot of our foundation on our double deeps. And if we're running a single, we'll just give them, when the honey flow's kicked in real good and they're peaked, we'll just set a foundation super on top and let them work their way up in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in a few days, we'll shake them out, put an excluder in, and then put the super back on and let them come back up into the super and finish it off.
That's a similar strategy to what I use. I like to let them get up there and work a little bit, whether it's comb or foundation. One thing I have noticed, and you probably noticed this too, is if you put a box of foundation on there, man, as soon as they start drawing that comb out, she gets up there and starts laying.
Yep.
She loves laying in that brand new comb, doesn't she? I mean, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
buddy.
I
There's
mean,
actually, you can do a little trick. It's kind of brutal, but it's not, it keeps brood out of your supers. Take you like a light saline spray in a spray bottle and spray the brood down with it and it'll kill it. And then the bees will go up in there and clean it out and you won't have to worry about brood being in your honey super.
hmm.
Comb producers do that a lot.
What I've done is I just, if I see some eggs, as soon as I see eggs, that thing's drawn out a little bit, then I put the excluder in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that brutal, I put it in like 2 to 3 weeks before I plan on harvesting, at least, if not longer.
Yeah.
And then that brood, it'll emerge, and then they'll backfill it with honey.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it may have one cycle of brood through there, but that's not enough. It doesn't turn it real dark or anything with one cycle. It works out pretty good. And I've done that. But like you say, a empty box of foundation, I found works just about as good as a queen excluder. She doesn't go up there until
Right.
that comb's drawn out. And so they'll even go up and start working if you put comb on top of that, they'll start working the comb above there and putting honey in
Yep.
it while they're drawing out that foundation box. And so that's one way to do it.
Mhm.
So I do the similar thing though. I'll stack whatever it is, whether it be comb or foundation, I put it on top. Once they're working it good, even if it's a month or two before, if they're working it and starting to put honey in there, and the bees are happily working upstairs, then I'll put the queen excluder above the brood chamber. And once they're working it, it seems like they go right through that excluder. Would you
Yes.
agree with that? Once they're
Oh,
they're working and they're
absolutely.
comfortable, they don't. And I also try to have some sort of an upper entrance, like I'll offset
Oh,
the
yeah.
box a little bit, or you can move that. I think it helps with ventilation. I'm not sure why they seem to
Absolutely.
like it if you just like slide the box, forward a little bit, one of those boxes above, or you can
Oh,
even
yeah.
do two or three of them, stagger them, make like
Mhm.
one bee space in the back or the front. Man, they just love that.
Oh, absolutely.
So those are a couple keys that I've learned. It seems like over the years from different people I've tried, and they seem to work real well. I used to not use excluders, but man, that was such a pain trying to pick through all that. It's such a nightmare. And so I just am like, well, even if it limits my honey a little bit, I'm going to use excluders because it's
Oh,
so much,
absolutely.
so much easier to do that. But
Once you go from a hobbyist to somewhat of a sideliner, an excluder is not a terminal piece of equipment in the beehive, but it's, you got to have them hanging out for certain applications. And that's one of them, you know.
yeah, also I guess you use them a lot in splits, right? To shake
Yes.
the queen down. And that's by far, in my opinion, the easiest way to do splits and make sure your
Mhm.
queen, where the queen's at is just and I've seen Bob does that a lot, don't you? I know you guys probably
Oh,
do that
yeah.
a lot. You shake everything down below. I've noticed, I think in some of his videos that you guys will, you kind of look for the queen as you pick the frames out. And if you see her, then you know where she's at and you can identify that and make sure she's in the bottom box. But if you
Mhm.
don't see her, you just shake them and that keeps her down below. So then you know everything above the excluder you can take if you're trying to take a queenless splits away. So that works out really good.
Mhm.
Um, that's my preferred method for doing
Oh,
splits is just to shake
absolutely.
that queen down, not have to worry about finding her. I just have the hardest time finding her sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Although I thought I found most of them that day with you, but you said you found a few queens in those nukes.
There was only 3, which I was very happy about. Usually, I thought there would be more.
Three out
So,
of 104.
104. Yeah. So,
Man, that is not a bad percentage, dude.
no, heck no. That's a great percentage.
Man, when I heard you talk, I thought you had found a bunch. I heard you talking about it. So when we talked about it, I thought you found like 20 or something, but three, that's a really good
No, three's
percentage.
great. Three's awesome.
I know I spotted a whole bunch of queens going through and I knew where they were. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
know
yeah.
there were a few I missed, but I spotted a bunch of them.
I was about to say,
That yellow dot
yeah.
really helps.
Heck yeah.
Oh man. Good stuff, man. It's amazing how
Yeah.
fast an hour goes by, isn't it? We've been
I
on here almost an
know. I was
hour.
just thinking that. I was like, damn.
Talk a little bit about any words of wisdom you may have. Maybe if there's someone new into beekeeping that is a little scared to get into it or just doesn't know what to do, maybe some words of wisdom, and then kind of let us know what you have planned for the future, kind of what your goals are.
Yeah. So for anybody that's kind of worried about how their season's going to go or somebody just now getting into bees, don't be scared. Your bees are going to swarm and they're going to die and they're going to abscond. You just got to kind of tough it out and be tenacious. And, you know, through failure, you'll find success. That's the only thing, the strongest survive. That's Mother Nature's number one principle. And when you're dealing with bees, you're dealing with Mother Nature. So you got to keep that in mind. That's my kind of word to the wise, I guess. You know, I promise you, I may look like I know everything, but I am far from the all knowing and I mess up quite a bit sometimes too. So, everybody ain't perfect when it comes to the beekeeping game. Um,
Oh yeah. Is anybody perfect? I don't know.
no, heck no. They can't. If they are, they ain't beekeeping.
Yeah, if they are, they're not telling you all the truth about
Yeah,
stuff.
right. Yeah.
They're not telling the full story, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do try to, I share some of my failures and successes, and it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
weird. It's kind of weird because when I feel like I'm getting things figured out, then I have a day where nothing goes right,
Mhm.
and I feel like, man, maybe I don't know anything, and so it can be very discouraging sometimes
Yeah.
if you're not careful. But like you say, I think isn't that a word Bob uses? Tenacity, doesn't he use that a lot with
Yes. Be
bees?
tenacious. Yep.
Be tenacious with what you're doing, and that's really anything in life. It's not just
Oh
beekeeping, but
yeah,
really, if you got a goal, if you got something you want to accomplish, anything really, you have to be tenacious and have some
right,
tenacity involved. Or if you just shrivel up with the least bit of
right.
adversity, then you're not going to be successful. It's not going to be a goal that you're going to achieve, because rarely do good things happen to people that just give up easily.
Yes.
Almost always there's failure in whatever you do, and beekeeping is definitely, it's a hobby slash profession slash obsession that
Yeah.
that includes a lot of failure.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about it, is that you can rest assured, you can take confidence in knowing that everybody has failed in beekeeping if they've been doing it for any amount of time. It's kind of like they say, it's kind of a term I've heard before. If with horseback riding, you ain't rode if you ain't been throwed, or something like that.
Yeah,
You
right.
gotta get thrown off the horse, or you're not really a horseback rider.
Yeah.
You've got
Oh
to do
yeah.
that. And so same thing with beekeeping. You're gonna lose some. What would be your advice as far as someone getting started? Like how many colonies? Any just quick tips for them at getting started?
So I have kind of a little saying about that, and this doesn't really go with just colony numbers. It kind of goes with everything, but two is one, one is none, and three is spare parts. So
Okay,
if you're
I
going to
like it.
buy two, get three. And if you're planning on buying one, at least get two. That way you got something to play with. You know,
Okay, two is one is none, and three is spare parts.
yes, sir. Yep.
Man, I like that.
I heard that from a guy in high school and I have never forgot it.
It doesn't just apply to beekeeping, does it?
Oh no, that's every day, baby.
Seth, tell me why you're so happy, man. We'll talk a little philosophical here, man. You are one of the happiest people. I've seen interviews. I've seen you working with Bob. I've seen you. Greg had you on with Nature's Image Farm, had you on one night, and just working with you all day long. It just seems like you're always happy, man. What makes you so happy?
You got to spend more time with me. You'll probably have a change of heart. But I just kind of like to have I don't know, an upward disposition on stuff. If stuff's not quite going my way, it's like, well, I mean, it could be worse. I hate to say that, knock on wood, but you know what I mean. You kind
Yeah.
of just look at the brighter side of things, so to speak.
Yeah, let's just have that happy personality, that
Yeah.
upbeat personality, so to speak, and that energy rubs off, man. It's awesome.
Uh-huh.
But I do appreciate you coming on tonight
Oh
and for
yeah.
this episode of Intentional Beekeeping. And I think I've learned some things tonight, and you broke it down real good for some folks, and some great principles shared here. So have to get together another time. That'd be awesome to get together with you another
Yeah.
time and
Oh
work
yeah.
bees again and break bread with you maybe. And maybe I can get up there and hang out with you and Bob one of these days. I don't
That'd be
know.
cool,
My
man.
schedule is so crazy just with between work and the bees.
Oh, I bet.
I have grand visions of what I want to do and who I want to go visit. But it just, I'm always end up just working my bees. You know how that
I
is.
get that. Oh yeah, man.
Anyway, I think we'll wrap this up, Seth. I appreciate you coming on tonight. And everyone, I'm going to go ahead and post. What I'll do is I'll post right here. I'm going to post the video of the day when I worked with Seth over there. And I'm also going to post his video right here on these end screens. So you can go check those two videos out. And Seth, I know you've got a video dropping here right away.
Yes, sir.
Of kind of a follow-up video. So I'm going to put that in the description. And so you guys go and check that out as well. Once I get this video uploaded, it will have been up in a couple of days probably, but Seth's doing a great job on YouTube. He's got a great mentor and he's got a lot of things to share with us out here in the beekeeping world. And I appreciate your time, Seth.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to say what I always say. Y'all take care, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.